So if you're going to work with kids in this population and these issues, sexual development and sexual deviance is something we've got to figure out. Because the problem is they're doing both. They've done something sexually deviant because they're in trouble and they're with us because they wouldn't have got here otherwise. They're also experiencing sexual development because, like brain development, sexual development happens over a course of time. Can anyone here tell me when they were 14 what their sexual preferences and interests were and they were fixed at 14? No one could. You know, at 14 you don't have fixed anything except you're fixated on, hedonistic practices. That's about it at 14. So we have to figure out, when we're talking about deviant, I kind of don't like the term deviant, but I'm kind of using it here as a point. So we talk about what's statistically normal, because I don't even know what that is. What's developmentally normal, which is hard, because what's typical and accepted, what's unfamiliar, what's uncomfortable, what's unhealthy, what's abusive, and what's illegal, because these two aren't always the same, believe it or not. You think anything that's abusive is illegal, right? Well, in this state, at the age of 14, if your parent signs a waiver with DSS, you can get married to anybody. I had to assess a young couple about 2 years ago. They had a 2-week-old baby who had multiple fractures in both femurs. And I'm assuming at 2 weeks old that they did it, right? So I walk into the room. The mother is 15 years old, and the father is 35. So I'm going, okay, so what I'm dealing with here is multiple levels of child abuse because, so I go to DSS. I'm like, why aren't you stomping on top of this guy's head? And they pulled out the form that said, Mom signed over legal rights. She can get married to anyone at 14. So if you have sex with a 35-year-old when you're 14, it's child abuse, unless your parents signed a piece of paper, and then it's legal. So what's abusive and what's illegal aren't necessarily the same.
Is that in different states?
In North Carolina. I don't know about other states, to tell you the truth. My guess, if it's here, there's a few more other states out there. Because I'm hoping we're not as, the bottom. So, yeah, again, what I'm trying to figure out here is when I look at this and I get a behavior, what does it mean? If you can tell me what's sexually normal for an adolescent boy, tell me, because we could make some serious money. Because I don't know what is. And I've got, like I said, I've got teenagers at home. I've got nieces and nephews. But there isn't a sexual behavior out there that I can't find you an adult that would consent to it. You can find the most sadistic, masochistic, abusive behavior. My quick story here is I have a colleague that does this work out in California. And one time, Blake, when I was out there visiting, he's like, let's go on a field trip. And you have to know Blake, he's a bit of a wild guy. He goes, he took me to the underground sex shops in San Francisco. And look, I've been doing this work for about 10 years. I thought it was impossible. I was blushing. I was looking at things going, oh my God, what is that for? And the guy at the counter, I had like a half-an-hour conversation. I said, tell me about the clients. The guy was just as fascinated. And he's like, most of them come in nice suits. And he's like, yeah. He goes, the guy behind the counter drove like a nice Mercedes Benz because he was making a lot of money, he said. And but the things in that was unimaginable. Some of the things that they used. And so I go back to what is normal. I don't know. I can't even tell you what's normal with adults. I certainly can't tell you what's normal with adolescents. And I have to base it a lot on my experience. But when I was an adolescent, which is a long time ago now, I didn't have internet, and I didn't have cell phones, and I didn't have half the things that kids have access to now. And what they're exposed to, the intensity, the duration, the frequency, not even close. So you have to keep attributing to that. When you're trying to figure this out, especially this part here, I don't know. I don't know what it is. And when you talk about, I guess when you do enough health surveys, when you look at them, they're not always clear either. Actually, I saw one that it interviewed something like 3,000 teenage girls, 18, and asked them about their first sexual experience. And 74% of them said it was an unwanted sexual experience. They weren't saying that they were raped. They were saying that they went along with it because their boyfriend wanted to them, or their girlfriends would put pressure on, or there was some other social. It may have been a sexual offense, anything from a sexual offense to, I just did it because I didn't want my boyfriend to break up with me. That 74% of them said their first sexual experiences was unwanted. And that's pretty big. There was actually just a study that came out last month that said about 10% of all adolescents commit some type of sexual offense. That's a lot. I live in Asheville in Buncombe County. If I took 10% of the adolescent population, that's around 2,400 kids. That means I've got 2,400 sex offenders in one county, if we're going to use that term. So that's a lot. I don't know. These are hard questions, and they're hard questions for us to answer. It's hard question, even harder for them to answer. So as we talk to them, let them define these things. I do less defining. I let them define it and talk about it. Okay. Again, so these are all things that we're trying to figure out too. What is the good and bad of this? We have all our kids are experiencing some degree of this, if not all of these things. And you know, I hate when I get reports and they say the child excessively masturbates. I had one the other day. I had to deal with not one of our clinicians, but another clinician. She said that the child excessively masturbated, and I asked how many times he did it, and she's like, 1 time a month. And I went, okay, so I know something about your sexual habits. Can I find out something about his? Because what makes it excessive? Well, he shouldn't have to masturbate at all. Okay, you need to do something else, because this isn't the work for you. So my question was, so is 1 time a day excessive? Is 5 times a day excessive? Is 10 times a day excessive? And the answer is, it depends. I've got a kid who masturbates probably once a month, once every couple weeks or so, but he does it so violently that it causes physical harm. That's excessive masturbation. I've got kids who can masturbate 5 to 10 times a day, but it doesn't intrude on their life, and they're able to function and get by. Now, would I like to reduce that? Yes, but it's not what you would consider intrusive into their life. So it depends. So we've got to be careful how we do that. And again, all kids, I mean, if you remember I hate to even mention this, remember the old Porky's movies? There's some extent to say that voyeurism and exhibitionism is actually developmentally okay within a window. It's on a continuum. But, you know, I've got kids who will expose themselves, and when I evaluate them, one of the things I ask is, so when you're exposing yourself, are you looking at yourself and getting aroused, or are you looking at the other person and seeing if they're uncomfortable? Because that's different. If I expose myself and getting aroused, it's because I want to engage with that person sexually, and these kids don't get it, and they think that's going to work. If they're looking to see if they make the other person uncomfortable, well, that's sadistic, and that's different. I'm getting aroused by their discomfort. Is different than I'm getting aroused because I think I'm going to engage in sex. Same with voyeurism. Am I peeping on someone because I want to see someone naked, or I want them to see me seeing someone naked so it makes them uncomfortable? Those are different things. So more questions. Don't let answers are tough, because answers stop us from asking questions. Good questions are always better than good answers. So keep asking questions when you're dealing with these kids.